All right, well, I recently did a Clues by Sam that a viewer said was the hardest one ever, at least the hardest one they had done. But those were, among the daily puzzles. I also did an evil and a super evil sent to me by Sam, the creator of the game. And Sam sent me a message and said if I'm interested in the actually all-time hardest puzzle, it would be this one. They said it's borderline a joke how hard it is. So I'm going to check it out. Link in the description if you want to try this puzzle. Yeah, are you going to help me, Bernie? You going to help me? Yeah. Bernie's going to help. I'm sure Bernie will be great help. Basically, if you're not familiar with Clues by Sam, this is a logic puzzle. We're trying to identify all the innocents and the criminals. Yep. All right, so we're starting with Xena here. Kevin is one of 3 criminals in row 3. Okay, Kevin is a criminal. There's 3 criminals in row 3. There's an odd number of criminals to the left of me. Okay, so an odd number out of the 2 to the left, well, it has to be 1. So there's 1 criminal among those 2. Kevin's a criminal. In order to get 3, Lisa has to be a criminal. And then Joyce and Isaac are 1 of each. Very nice. Okay, I'm going to get rid of those because I think we've got that marked. 2 pilots have an innocent directly below them. 2 pilots. Well, is there just the 3 pilots up there? Yeah, there's 3 pilots up here. Oop, Ellie and Flora, among the 2 of them, only 1 is going to have an innocent below them because Isaac and Joyce are 1 of each. So Aaron has to have an innocent directly below him. Ellie has to be innocent. Okay, very nice. Kevin has, and I think we're good there because one of these 2 is going to have an innocent. Yeah, Kevin has the most innocent neighbors. And is that all we have to go off of? There's an odd number of criminals to the left of me. We did that. 2 pilots have an innocent directly below them. Kevin is 1 of 3 criminals. Yeah, okay, so that's all we have to go off of. My Roomba's starting. It always does this. As soon as I start recording a longer video, the Roomba starts, and it sounds really noisy to me. I know the mic's not picking it up, but it's gonna. Okay, it's trying to do the office here. I'm gonna tell it to go to a different room. Pause for a second. All right, it should be going to a different room now. Okay. Okay, so Kevin has the most innocent neighbors. That's all we have to go off of. Well, okay, so let's think about this. So Kevin and Lisa. Kevin compared to Lisa. They share Gary, Henry, Paul, and Rose. Right? So those 4 are kind of irrelevant as far as those 2 are concerned for number of innocent neighbors. However many there, it could be all 4 of them, it could be 1 of them, it could be none, but it's the same, so they sort of cancel out. So Kevin will have to have at least 1 among Flora, Joyce, and Olive. Okay, so Kevin and Joyce. It's Flora, Gary, Olive, and Paul that cancel out and are irrelevant there. Joyce already has Ellie. So Kevin will need to have at least 2 that Joyce doesn't have, which could be Henry and Rose, but also Joyce. So 2 of Henry, Rose, and Joyce will have to be innocent. At least 2. And if Nick were innocent, then Henry, Joyce, and Rose would all have to be innocent. Can Isaac be innocent? Okay, let's think about this. So we know these are 1 of each. If Isaac is innocent, I'm going to say blue is innocent and yellow is criminal. Isaac's innocent, Joyce is a criminal, right? Joyce now has 2 that Kevin doesn't have, which means Kevin needs to have at least 3 that Joyce doesn't have. But the only 3 Kevin can have that Joyce doesn't have are Henry, Joyce, and Rose. And Joyce is now a criminal. So I don't think Isaac can be innocent. I think Isaac is a criminal. And Joyce is innocent. There we go. Very nice. Okay, so now Joyce has Ellie, Kevin has Joyce. They are even. If Nick is so we need 1 of Henry or Rose, at least 1, maybe both. If Nick is innocent, then Henry and Rose will both have to be innocent. Okay, Sarah and Zoe have an equal number of innocent. Ooh, Sarah and Zoe. So I just said if Nick is innocent, Henry and Rose both have to be innocent. And then Oliver Will would have to be innocent. If it's Will, then Olive has 4 innocents. Kevin has 3 at that point, but we can have, I mean, Flora or Gary. That seems fine. Let's see. I'm gonna make these. I think maybe it's purple. Because Kevin has to have at least one more that Joyce doesn't have. Okay, what about Kevin and Isaac? They share Flora, Joyce, and Olive. Isaac has Ellie, which means but we've already got. But see, Henry, Rose, Paul, Gary. There's a bunch of options that Kevin has that Isaac doesn't. So we need at least 2 of those 4, but that's fine. Oh, I didn't even see that. There's 12 criminals in total. I didn't even see that clue. Is that helpful? 12 criminals. I mean, well, we've got 4, 8, 14. 14 remaining. There's 3 criminals already, so we need 9 more criminals. There's only 5 more innocents to add into the grid. So we can't put too many innocents in like the top and bottom row because Kevin needs innocents. We need at least 1 among Nick, Olive, and Will. And we need at least 1 from Henry and Rose. So, all right, let's think. So we've done Kevin compared to Lisa, Joyce, and Isaac. Let's think about Kevin compared to Gary and Paul and some of these others. So Kevin and Gary share Flora, Joyce, Lisa, and Henry. But we don't know much about the top compared to, so what about Kevin and Paul? Because Paul has Xena. Kevin and Paul, they share Joyce, Olive, Rose, and Lisa. Paul has Xena. Kevin needs 2 more that Paul doesn't have. But Paul could be one of those. And you've got Flora, Gary, and Henry up here that are okay. If you add Rose, that doesn't change Paul and Kevin's net. But if you do Rose as innocent, then 2 of Nick, Olive, then Olive or Will would have to be innocent. Maybe Olive and Kevin? Do we need to look at Olive and Kevin? They only share Joyce and Paul. Olive has Xena. If you add Nick or Will, then that will be 2 that Olive has that Kevin doesn't. And Kevin will need 3. So but we only have, did I say 5? 5 more innocents? Is that right? There's 14. There's 5 more innocents. So if Nick or Will is innocent, then Olive would have 2 that Kevin doesn't have. And Kevin would need 3 more. That would be 4 of our 5 innocents. But Olive could be one of those. Olive could be one of them that Kevin has that Olive doesn't. Oh, man. Okay. Where's the place to look? Kevin compared to Flora? They share Joyce and Gary. Flora has Ellie, but Kevin's going to have Henry or Rose, so they're the same already. All right, well, we know Henry or Rose, at least one of them has to be innocent. So let's just try it and see what happens. So I'm interested in Rose being innocent because that gives Zoe 2 innocents. It gives Kevin 2. Joyce has 1. Paul. Kevin and Paul. Okay, so if Rose is innocent, Paul has 3 and Kevin has 2. Kevin could have Paul, theoretically, but then all 3 of these are innocent. Because Zoe and Sarah have to have the same. And now we've used all of 5 of our innocents. Olive has 3, 4. Olive has 5 at that point. Kevin has 4. Kevin can't get enough innocents. So if Rose is innocent, Paul has 3, Kevin has 2. Kevin needs 2 more, and Paul can't be one of them. So Paul is a criminal in that case. Zoe has 2. We're going to have 2 over here. And again, it can't be Olive, because Paul's going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. Paul's going to have 4. Kevin needs to have 5, and Kevin has 3. Kevin needs 2 more. Nick would have to be innocent. Well, because we can't give another one to Paul. Paul has 4. Kevin has 3. Needs 2 more among Flora, Gary, and Henry. Maybe that works. Olive has 3. Olive has 3. Kevin's going to have 5 because Paul has 4. Seems like that works, actually. So if Rose is innocent, Paul can't be innocent. Maybe, is there any way for Paul to be innocent? Olive then has 3 innocents, and Zoe has 2. Sarah needs 2. So at least one of Nick or Will have to be innocent, which will give Olive 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, Kevin will need... Let's just go ahead and say Olive is innocent, because there's no way... I mean, if you do both of these, now Olive has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kevin's going to need to have 6. Kevin has 2, 3, 4, 5. No, there's not enough innocents left. We only have 5 innocents left. So if Paul's innocent, Olive has to be one of the 2 for Sarah. So it's Nick or Will. Paul already has 3. Olive has 3. Nick or Will, either one gives Olive 4. Kevin needs to have 5. Kevin has 3. Let's go ahead and say Henry. It's Henry or Rose is one of them. We already know that. So Kevin has 4. Kevin needs to have 5. You do Flora or Gary and Nick or Will. That seems like it works. So maybe Paul can be innocent. Paul can be innocent. Okay. Rose can be innocent. Paul can be innocent. Can Henry be innocent? I don't know why Henry couldn't be innocent. It seems like Henry being innocent isn't really a problem. Paul and Rose can't both be innocent. We know that, right? We've established that. Because that gives 3 for Zoe. Nick, Olive, and Will are all innocent. That's all of our 5 innocents we have remaining. Olive has way too many. Kevin can't get enough. It doesn't work for those both to be innocent. So Zoe's going to have 1 or 2 innocent neighbors, which means Sarah is going to have 1 or 2 innocent neighbors. If it's Nick or Will, then Olive is going to have 3 already. Can these 2 both be innocent? Maybe that's the thing to think about. Olive will have 4. There's no way... We can't do Paul, Will, and Nick, I don't think, because Olive has 5. Kevin needs to have 6. Kevin has 2. Kevin needs 4 more, and we've already used 3 of our 5 remaining, so that's not going to work. So if Nick and Will are innocent, Paul can't be innocent. So Rose... If they both have... If Olive's a criminal, and they both have 2, I'm just kind of going off that. This is if Nick and Will are both innocent. It would force Rose to be innocent. Olive would have 4. Kevin would need to have 4. And Kevin has... Wait, Olive has 4. Kevin would need to have 5. And Kevin has 2. Kevin needs 3 more. But we only have 2 more innocents. So I don't think Nick and Will can both be innocent. Okay, Nick and Will can't both be innocent. So, if there's 2 innocents for Zoe and Sarah, Olive has to be one of them. Okay? You also would have Nick or Will. So Olive would have 1, 2, 3 neighbors. Again, I feel like it can't be Paul. That's the second one for Zoe. Olive would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Kevin needs to have 5, but Kevin has 3. So Kevin needs 2 more. And we've used 3. Kevin could have 2 more, and that would be okay. So it could be Olive and Paul, and Nick or Will. Paul has 3, but we already know Kevin's going to have 5, so that's okay. And you can do Olive and Rose, because Olive has 3. Kevin has 3. Kevin just needs 1 at the top. But Paul would have 4. Interesting. So if Olive is one of the innocents, and we're doing 2 innocents. Okay, if Zoe and Sarah each have 2 innocents, Olive has to be one of them for Sarah. Nick and Will is another one, which gives Olive 1, 2, 3. If it's Paul, that gives Olive 4. If it's Rose, that gives Paul 4. So either way, if there's 2 innocents around Sarah and Zoe, Kevin needs to have 5. And he's going to have 3 among Joyce, Olive, and Paul or Rose. So he's going to have 2 between Flora, Gary, and Henry. So if there's 2 innocents around Sarah and Zoe, the whole top row is criminals. And Sarah and Zoe are criminals. Because we use all of our remaining innocents elsewhere. Okay, so if there's 2 innocents around Sarah and Zoe, the whole top row is criminals. Sarah and Zoe are criminals. If there's just 1, then these are both criminals. Which means Henry is innocent. Because we already know there's 1 between Henry and Rose. For Kevin to have more than Joyce. And in fact, that would mean that Nick could not be the one among Sarah and Will. Because if Nick is innocent, Joyce has 2 more that Kevin doesn't have, and Kevin needs to have 3. Kevin has Joyce, would have to have Henry and Rose. So if there's 1 around Sarah and Zoe, these 3 are all criminals. And Will or Olive is the other innocent. If it's Will, well, either way, whether it's Will or Olive, Paul will have 3 innocents. Kevin will need to have 4 innocents. Kevin has 2. If it's Will, then it's Flora and Gary. If it's Olive, then it's Flora, at least Flora or Gary. But can Zoe be innocent then? Paul will have 3. If Zoe is innocent, okay, well, let's just go. So one of these 2. So Paul has 3, at least. Kevin needs at least 4. Kevin has 1, 2, needs 2 more. You could do Olive and one of these. 2, 3. Then, yeah, if Zoe's innocent, it would have to be... Paul would then have 4, is what I'm thinking. Kevin has 3. It would have to be both of these. And that would make the 5. That would be fine. I was just wondering if Zoe is always innocent, or is always a criminal, but not. But that would still make the top row all criminals again. So back to one each. We know all of these are criminals. Olive and Will are one of each. So Paul has 3. If Zoe's a criminal, Paul will have 3. Kevin will need to have 4. Henry's innocent. We know that. Oliver Will is innocent. Can Sarah be innocent? Olive would have 3. Yeah, because see, Olive can be one of the ones for Kevin. And then we're fine. Flora and Gary are still one of at least one. And even if Will is innocent, that gives Olive 3, but Gary has 2 and just needs, or Kevin has 2. It needs 2 more, which would be Flora and Gary. But if it's Olive, then Kevin has 3, Olive has 2, Paul has 3. Kevin needs Flora or Gary. Flora or Gary is always innocent. Is Henry always innocent? Is Henry always innocent? If there's one, okay. Let's go back. I don't remember, because I said that the top row were all criminals in the initial situation. If there's 2 innocents, 2 innocents for Zoe and Sarah, Rose is innocent. Because if Rose is criminal, Henry's innocent. Is there any way for Henry to be a criminal is the question. If there's 1 innocent among Zoe and Sarah, Henry's innocent. If there's 2 and Rose is a criminal, Henry's innocent. But if Rose is innocent, that's the 2. Paul is a criminal. There's 2. It can't be Nick and Will. We figured that out. Olive has to be innocent. It's Nick or Will. Paul has 4 already. Kevin needs 5. Kevin has 3. It can't be Will as the other one down here, because then Paul has 5. Kevin needs to have 6, which is way too many. So it has to be here. Paul has 4. Paul has 3. Paul has 4. Kevin needs 5. Kevin has 3. Could be Flora and Gary, though, couldn't it? I don't think it forces Henry to be innocent. And it can't be here, because then Olive has 4. Oh, it works out. It's still the same, yeah. Kevin still has to have 5. Either Olive or Paul is going to have 4, effectively. And Kevin still has to have 5, but it could be Flora and Gary, couldn't it? Is there a reason why Flora and Gary and then Henry being the criminal is a problem? Joyce has 4. Kevin has... Oh, no, wait. It can't be Nick and Will. Olive has to be one of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Paul has 4. Kevin's going to have 5. So Will has to be criminal. Nick has to be innocent. Okay. 2, 3. Joyce has 5. Right, because if Nick is innocent... Right. Okay. We said for Nick to be innocent, Henry and Rose both have to be innocent. So if there's 2 innocents and Rose is one of them, it can't be Nick and Will. Olive is one of them. If it's Nick, Henry's innocent. If it's Will, then Paul has 5. Kevin needs to have 6. It doesn't work. Henry is always innocent. Henry is always innocent. Whew. Okay. There's an odd number. I don't know how long that step took, but it was a long time. There's an odd number of criminal cops. Okay. Cops. Sarah, Zoe, and Dennis are cops. Odd number. So they're either all criminals or one is a criminal. If only one is a criminal, there's going to be 2 innocents. And we've already used 1. So we've only got 4 innocents left. Right? Let's do the math again. 12 criminals in total. We have 3. We need 9 more criminals. We have 4, 8, 10, 13. There's 4 innocents left. 4 innocents left. If 2 of the cops are innocent, that's a lot of our innocents. Okay, well, first of all, let's say, can both of these be innocent? I suspect not, but let's just try it. Paul would have 3 innocents. Kevin would have 2. Okay, maybe before that, let's think about Nick. Can Nick be innocent? Nick can be innocent. Can we still have 2 innocents? Can we still have 2 innocents around Zoe and Sarah? Maybe that's what we need to think about with the cops here. So Paul or Rose is one of them, right? Let's go Rose. Actually, let's go Paul, because I think that's going to be more limited. Paul is an innocent, we'll say. Okay, there's 2 around Zoe. Rose is criminal. We already know we can't have all 3. So at most, one of these 2 is innocent. So Rose being a criminal means Nick has to be a criminal. We already know. If Nick is innocent, Rose is innocent. Actually, so step back for a second. If Nick is innocent, Rose is innocent, which makes it 2. 2 innocents. Paul's a criminal. Olive or Will, one of them has to be innocent. Paul has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 innocents. Kevin has to have 6. We're saying there's 2 innocent cops. Right? Hold on. Let's go back just a step further even. Just Nick being innocent. We're going to start with that. Nick is innocent. Forces Rose to be innocent. Paul's a criminal. Olive or Will be innocent. So Paul will have 1, 2, 3, 4 innocents. Kevin will have to have 5. Kevin has 3. We only have 4 innocents remaining. 2 of Olive, Flora, and Gary would have to be innocent. So it would have to be Olive plus one of these 2. It couldn't be Will. In which case, all the cops are criminals. If Nick is innocent, the cops are all criminals. Okay. But that works, I think. The cops would all be criminals. If Nick is a criminal, it doesn't force as many things. Because we could still just have 1 innocent among Zoe and Sarah. If there's 2, okay, let's say Nick is a criminal, and there's 2 innocents for Sarah and Zoe. Paul now has 1, 2, 3, 4 innocents. Kevin needs to have 5. Kevin has 3. We can't add Rose, because there'd be too many. Rose would have to be a criminal. Paul would have to be innocent. So Kevin would have 4, and 1 of Flora and Gary, that would be all 4. Again, the cops would all be criminals. So if you have 2 innocents around Zoe and Sarah, the cops are all criminals. So for there to be 2 innocents among the cops, there's 1 innocent around Sarah and Zoe. Okay, so let's go with that. So let's say there's going to be 2 innocents among the cops, because there's an odd number of criminals among the cops. So it's 1 or 3. So let's say there's 2 innocents. Paul and Rose, therefore, are both criminals because there's only 1 innocent around Sarah and Zoe. Let's just go with these 2 being the innocents for now. Paul now has 3. Olive has 3. One of them is going to get a 4th because Nick, Oliver, Will has to be innocent. So Paul or Olive is going to have 4 innocents, which means Kevin needs to have 5. Kevin only has 2. Kevin will have to have Olive, Flora, and Gary. We've added 5 innocents. We only have 4 innocents remaining. Those 2 can't both be innocent. Okay, so now let's say Dennis is innocent plus one of these. Can it be Dennis and Zoe? Well, Paul, again, has 3 innocents. Nick can't be innocent. If Rose is innocent, if Rose is guilty, Nick is guilty. So Oliver Will has to be innocent. So Paul will have 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, Kevin has to have 5. Kevin has 2. Needs to have Olive, Flora, and Gary. And we've got too many innocents again. So it can't be Zoe. It would have to be Sarah and Dennis if there's 2 innocents among the cops. In which case, Olive now has 3. But Olive could be the other one here, which would give Kevin 3. And Kevin would need to have 4. Paul would also have 3. Well, Paul's going to have 3 no matter what. You can't possibly do this because Olive would have 4. Gary would need 5, and that doesn't work. So it would have to be Olive, Will. They both have 3. Carrie would need to have 4. Or Kevin would need to have 4. So Flora or Gary would be one of each. That would work. But, okay, forget about whether that's possible. Here's the key thing. If there are 2 innocents among the cops, we can't do Sarah and Zoe. We can't do Zoe and Dennis. Zoe is a criminal. Either they're all 3 criminals, or the 2 innocents are Sarah and Dennis. Zoe is a criminal. There's an odd number of criminals in column C. Let's get rid of these markings here. Odd number of criminals in column C. So we've got 1 criminal. Can we have... Okay, so we either have 0 more criminals or 2 more criminals. Could these all 3 be innocent? I suspect not. That's my guess. Because that's used 3 of our 4 innocents that we have remaining. And it puts 2 around Zoe. And we'd have to have 2 between Nick, Olive, and Will. And we only have 1 more. So that doesn't work. So we can't have all 3 of those innocents. So there's 1 innocent among these 3. If it's Paul, then we need 2 innocents over here again. If Paul is the 1 innocent, let's see if Paul can be innocent. Because, okay, Paul being innocent makes Rose a criminal and Nick a criminal. But we have 2 innocents around Zoe, so Olive and Will are both innocent. But now Paul has 1, 2, 3, 4 innocents. Kevin needs to have 5. Kevin has 4. Gary's a criminal. Because Chad and Gary are both criminals if Paul is innocent. So Flora would have to be the other innocent. Gary would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Olive would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Paul would have 1, 2, 3, 4. That actually works. It does make Dennis and Sarah both criminals. But I think that works. Joyce has 4. Kevin has 5. Gary has... Yeah, I think everybody's good there. Okay, so Paul... If Paul is innocent, then all the cops are criminals. Okay? If Gary is innocent, maybe the better question is if Chad is innocent, because that doesn't help Kevin. That gives Gary 3 innocents already. Kevin would need to have 4 innocents. Kevin has 2, at least 4. Kevin needs 2 more that don't... and you can't do Gary. You can't do Gary. Because these 2 are both criminals. Needs two more and Flora doesn't help because of Gary. So Kevin would have to have Olive and Rose. And then Nick or Will would have to be the other one. So if Chad is innocent, then again, Dennis and Sarah are both criminals. Because we've already used 3 of our 4 innocents. Because Gary would have 3 innocents. Kevin would need at least 4. Kevin has 2. Kevin needs 2 more, and Flora doesn't count. Has to have Olive and Rose. And now there's 2 here. There's got to be 1 more between Nick and Will. That's our 4. Okay. So, if Paul is the innocent in column C, the cops are all criminals. If Chad is the innocent in column C, the cops are all criminals. If Gary is the innocent, can these both be innocent, is the question. If the only way is if Gary's innocent, I think, potentially. Chad is a criminal. Paul is a criminal. We've already used 3. We have to have 1, Nick, Oliver, Will. So Rose is a criminal. Olive has 3 innocents. Gary has 3 innocents. Kevin needs to have at least 4. Kevin has 3. So the last one has to be here. Paul has 3. Olive has 3. Joyce has 3. Kevin has 4. I think that works. Unfortunately. Okay. But... Gary being innocent. What does that do? I mean, it makes Chad and Paul both criminals. Can Nick be innocent? Can we think about that for a minute? Nick being innocent makes Rose innocent. We know that. Which means Paul's a criminal. Because we have 2 around Zoe. We need to have 2 around Sarah. It can't be Nick and Will because Olive will have 4. Kevin will need to have 5. And we only have 1 more left. So it can't be Nick and Will. It has to be Nick and Olive in that case. If Nick is innocent, Olive and Rose are both innocent. Will and Paul are criminals. Olive has 3. Paul has 4. Paul has 4. Kevin needs to have 5. Kevin has 4. So Gary or Flora would have to be the other one. And it would have to be Gary, because if it's Flora, then Chad is also innocent. But I think that works, doesn't it? Joyce has 4. Paul has 4. Olive has 3. Kevin has 5. Lisa has 3. Is there any way, maybe the better question is like Aaron, Barb, Chad. Well, not Chad. So we already know we have 1 innocent among Chad, Gary, and Paul. We have 1 innocent among Nick, Olive, and Will. At least. Is there any way Aaron or Barb can be innocent? I feel like I'm focusing so much on everyone else, and maybe these 2 are always criminals. If either one of them is innocent, that's another innocent for Flora that Kevin doesn't have. So let's just say Aaron is innocent, for example. Flora now has 3. Kevin needs to have 4. So we've got 1 down here. You definitely couldn't do 2 around Zoe and Sarah if Aaron was innocent. Because you'd have 2, 3, 4. That would be all of your innocents. So it would have to be Paul for the column here. You'd have to have 2 around here. That might work, actually. So you can do Olive, and now Kevin's got 4. Flora has 3. Olive has... Oh, Olive's going to have 4, though. Olive's going to have 4. And Gary's going to have 4. So if Aaron is innocent, then we only have 1 around Zoe and Sarah. Gary or Chad. But Gary and Chad both help Flora, so it couldn't be Chad. Because Flora's already got 3. Kevin has 2. Gary's irrelevant. Oh. Flora has 3. Kevin has 2. Kevin needs 2 more that Flora doesn't have. And it would have to be Flora. And Olive would have to be the 2. So Kevin now has 4. Flora has 3. It would have to be Gary. So it cancels them out. And this is going to be the same logic if Barb is innocent versus Aaron. Because they both help Flora and not Kevin. But Kevin has 5. That's all of our innocents. These are all criminals. Yeah, that works though, I think. And it doesn't matter if it's Aaron or Barb. Chad would have 4. Gary would have 4. But Kevin still has 5. I think that works. Odd number of criminals in column C. Odd number of criminal cops. Well, we know Dennis and Sarah are the same. They're either both innocent or both criminal. If they're both innocent, we've used up all of our innocents. Because we've got 1 for Nick, Olive, and Will, and 1 for Paul, Gary, and Chad. So Paul would have to be criminal, Rose is criminal. Therefore, Nick is criminal. It's Olive or Will. It's Chad or Gary. And Olive has 3. Kevin needs to have at least 4. So it has to be Olive and Gary. So if there's 2 innocent cops, then this is the innocents. It's Sarah, Olive, Gary, and Dennis. Joyce has 3. Paul has 3. Olive has 3. Will has 3. Kevin has 4. Gary has 3. Yeah, it's fine. That works. Flora has 3. Barb has 2. Chad has 3. So if there's 2 innocent cops, Olive and Gary are innocent. But yeah, let's leave those purple. But if they're both criminals, it doesn't tell me as much. Because then we've got at least 1 here, at least 1 here. We have 2 more. Okay. Well, what if Olive isn't innocent? A lot of times I end up making Olive innocent to give Kevin one that Olive doesn't have. If Olive is a criminal, Nick or Will is innocent. We know Nick and Will can't both be innocent, so just one of them is innocent. One of Paul and Rose is innocent. Olive already has 1, 2, 3 innocents. Kevin will have 1, 2, 3. No, Paul and Rose both have to be criminals in that situation because we've already got the 1 for Zoe and it's just Nick or Will. If Olive is a criminal, then Olive will have 1, 2, 3, Nick or Will. Kevin will need to have 4. Kevin has 2. Gary and Flora will both have to be innocent. That gives Kevin 4. Flora then has 3. So Barb and Chad are both criminals. In which case, Aaron is innocent and Flora had... Wait. Yeah. That's wild. Okay, if Olive is a criminal, we know there's only one around Sarah and Zoe. It's Nick or Will. Paul and Rose are both criminals. Olive will have 3. So Kevin needs to have at least 4, which makes Flora and Gary innocent. Gary being innocent makes Chad criminal. Also, Flora already has 3. Can't have more than 3. So Barb and actually, no, can't. This is a criminal. Flora can only have 3 because Kevin has 4. Those are all criminals. Now we've got 1, 2, and Sarah and Dennis have to be criminals. Nick or Will is an innocent. We've only added 3. We don't have the right number of innocents. If Olive is Olive can't be a criminal. If Olive is a criminal, we don't end up with the right number of innocents. Olive is innocent. Clever, Olive says. Yeah, thanks, Olive. Okay. Wow. Wow. And we didn't get another clue. Okay. Well, Nick and Rose are now the same. Because if Nick is innocent, we know Rose has to be innocent. But if Nick is a criminal, Will and Rose could both be innocent. Never mind. They're not the same. Okay, but Olive is innocent, which means Paul now has 3 innocents. Kevin also has 3 innocents. So Kevin needs at least one that Paul doesn't have, which could be Paul, Gary, or Flora. If Rose is innocent, that gives another one to Paul. And Kevin will have to have Gary or Flora. If Rose is innocent, Gary or Flora would have to be innocent. That seems okay. We said if Sarah and Dennis were innocent, Olive and Gary were innocent. So if Olive had been a criminal, that would have helped more. Okay. But we're down to 3 innocents now, right? Yeah, 3 innocents left. So now I'm back to wondering about Aaron and Barb. That gives Flora 3. Kevin has 3. Kevin needs to have a 4th. If there's an innocent up here, yeah, I don't know. Okay. Where's the place to look next? We know Dennis and Sarah can still be innocent, both of them. But saying they're criminals doesn't really help us out much. Well, we know if Sarah and Dennis are both innocent, then Gary is innocent. And things work. So let's try to... Everybody else would be criminals. So let's try to make other people innocent and see what happens. If we make Paul innocent, then we need to have one more among Nick and Will. Which means Olive would then have 1, 2, 3, 4 innocents. Kevin would need to have 5. Kevin would have 4. It can't be Rose. It'd have to be Gary or Flora. But it can't be Gary. Because we have 1 for column C. If Paul is innocent, Flora is innocent. Which gives Joyce 4. But Kevin has 5. If Paul is innocent, Flora is innocent. And you have 1 down here. But Gary has 3. Kevin has 5, so it's fine. You'd have 1 more innocent among Aaron and Barb. And Flora would have 1, 2, 3. That's fine. Joyce has 4. Olive has 4. It couldn't be Nick. It would have to be Will. 2, 3, 4. Joyce would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Kevin would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Flora would have 1, 2, 3. Aaron or Barb would be the other one. So Paul being innocent is fine. Let's make Rose innocent and see what happens. Rose is innocent. Paul is criminal. We need Will or Nick to be innocent. So Olive will have 1, 2, 3. Paul has 1, 2, 3, 4. Paul has 4. Kevin needs to have 5, but Kevin has 4. So Gary or Flora. Joyce will have 3. Seems fine. So Paul or Rose could be innocent. And we know if Nick is innocent, Rose is innocent. It makes all these criminals. Olive has 1, 2, 3. Paul has 4. Kevin needs to have 5. Which means Flora or Gary is innocent. Joyce will have 1, 2, 3, 4. But Kevin's going to have 5, so that's fine. So Nick can be innocent. If Will... Can Will be innocent? Will is innocent. Nick is guilty. Or criminal. Whatever. Paul, again, has 4. And Kevin would have to have 5. But it could be Paul. Well, either way, Flora is innocent then. Because it's only Gary or Paul. Oh, but you could have Rose and Gary. Paul would have 1, 2, 3, 4. No, you couldn't, because Paul would have 5. It'd have to be Paul and Flora. Olive would have 4. Paul would have 4. Kevin would have 5. Joyce would have 4. Where would your 4th one be? Your 4th innocent. We need one more innocent, right? Wait, do we have 3 or 4 innocents left? Now I can't even remember. Holy cow, this is going to be the longest video ever. Okay. 12 criminals in total. We have 4. We have 4. There's 8 more criminals. We have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 left. There's 8 more criminals. We have 3 innocents left, so it's those 3. Everybody else would be a criminal. Who can't be innocent? We know Gary can be innocent. Dennis, Gary, and Sarah can all be innocent. I kind of suspect that's where it's going. Can Gary be a criminal? Let's try that. Well, we know Dennis and Sarah are criminals then. I mean, Olive already has... No, doesn't have necessarily. These can all be criminals. Gary... So Paul or Chad would be... If Paul is innocent, Nick or Will is innocent. Rose is a criminal, which means Nick's a criminal. Which means Will is innocent. Paul has 1, 2, 3, 4. Kevin needs to have 5. So that makes Flora innocent. That's our 3 innocents. But that seems okay. So we can hide the clever clue. All right. Kevin has the most innocent neighbors. Sarah and Zoe have an equal number of innocent neighbors. There's an odd number of criminal cops. There's an odd number of criminals in column C. There are 12 criminals in total. Kevin is one of 3 criminals in row 3. There's an odd number of criminals to the left of me. 2 pilots have an innocent directly below them. Aaron does. Flora does. Ellie does not. What am I missing? Ah. Is it like Chad that can't be innocent? These are both criminals. And we know, what do we know? Paul already has 3. So Kevin needs at least 4. And it can't be one. Oh, it can't be Rose. Rose is a criminal. Flora would have to be innocent. Chad, Flora. And then Flora has 3. Kevin has 4. Joyce has 3. Olive has 2. Okay, Kevin has 4. Flora has 3. So Barb and Aaron would both be innocent, or both be criminals. That doesn't work either. Chad can't be innocent. Just like Olive couldn't be criminal, because we had the wrong number of innocents. Chad can't be innocent, because we'll end up with 2 innocents, but the rest of these all have to be criminals. Wow. Chad can't be innocent. Paul and I have 6 innocent neighbors in total. Is anybody going to watch this whole video? Oh, well. I've thought that before, and then, the video did well. So Paul and I have 6 innocent neighbors in total. Paul and I have 6 innocent neighbors in total. Well, Paul has 3. Chad has 1. That's 4. We need 2 more. We know Paul or Gary are one of each. So at this point, if Paul is innocent, Gary's a criminal, Rose is a criminal, Nick's a criminal, Will is innocent. Dennis and Sarah are criminals because we've used already 2 of our 3 innocents we have left. Paul would have 1, 2, 3, 4 innocent neighbors. Chad would have 1. That's 5. The other one would have to be Barb, Flora, or Dennis. Aaron would be a criminal. Well, it wouldn't be Dennis. Dennis and Aaron are criminals. So Barb or Flora. But Kevin would have 4 innocents. Paul would have 4. Flora would have to be innocent. But then Joyce would have 4. Yeah, Kevin would have 5. That's fine. It would have to be those 3. If Paul is innocent. That seems fine. It seems fine. If Paul is innocent, it's Flora and Will. If Gary is innocent, that means Paul's a criminal. Paul and I have 4. Paul has 3. Chad would have 2. That's already 5. So you couldn't do... You could do Rose and Nick, I think. 4, 5, 6. If you do this... Okay. It could be Paul, Will, and Flora. It could be Gary. Can it be Gary, Dennis, and Sarah? Remember, we said if Sarah and Dennis are innocents, Gary is the other innocent. Then Paul and Chad would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 innocents. We can't do... Dennis and Sarah can't both be innocent. I don't think. Because if those are both innocent... Olive already has 3. Paul has 3. Kevin has 3. Kevin needs 1 more. Gary has 3. So you can't do Flora. Because Kevin and Gary would have the same. Paul has 3. So it can't be Rose. So it has to be Gary or Paul. If it's Paul, then Olive has 4 and Kevin has 4, so it has to be Gary. Has to be Gary. If those two are innocent, Gary's innocent, and that's all of our innocents. And in which case, Chad will have 3 innocents. Paul will have 2. That's only 5. Sarah and Dennis are criminals. Oh! No, how? How? If they're innocent, they both have to be innocent because there's an odd number of criminal cops. Oh, because Paul has... I counted wrong. Dennis, Henry, Gary is 3. Paul has 3. I missed Joyce somehow. They would have 6. That still works. And now we've kind of confirmed that that's what's going on. But I'm going to figure it out logically. Okay. I suspected that was where we were headed. And then... All right. So... Gary being a criminal doesn't really cause me any trouble, I don't think. It does all of this. Paul would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Chad has 1, that's 5. The 6th one has to be one of these 3. It couldn't be Dennis. It would have to be Barb or Flora. Kevin would have 4 already. Paul would have 4. Kevin would need to have 5, so it would have to be Flora. And Paul would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Chad would have 2. There'd be 3 more. Kevin would still have the most. Feels like that works. So we can't just do Gary being a criminal. Are we back to Aaron and Barb, or... We already said that Paul, Flora, and Will could all be 3 be innocent. Can Rose be innocent? Paul's a criminal. Paul has 1, 2, 3, 4 innocents. Gary is innocent. So Chad has 2. Paul has 4. That's the 6. So that makes Will a criminal. Nick an innocent, because we need to have 2 around Sarah and Zoe at that point. That's our 3 innocents. Everybody else is a criminal. Kevin has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Olive has 3. Joyce has 4. It seems like that's fine. So Paul can be innocent. Rose can be innocent. Sarah and Dennis can be innocent. Gary can be innocent or guilty. Flora can be innocent. Can Barb be innocent? Okay, Flora now has 3 innocents. Kevin has 3. Kevin needs at least 1 more. We definitely can't do... I think an innocent up here means we can't do 2 around Zoe and Sarah. That would be the rest of our innocents. So it would have to be Paul. Gary. It would have to be this. Flora would be a criminal. Kevin would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Olive would have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that doesn't work. So if Barb is innocent, or if Aaron is innocent, I think it works out the same way. We can't have 2 around Zoe and Sarah. So that means that Paul and Rose are criminals and Gary is innocent. Which then means we've already got our 6 around Chad and Paul. So these are all criminals. Nick becomes... no, Nick is a criminal. Joyce has 3. Olive has 2. Paul has 3. Kevin has 4. Gary has 3. Flora has 4. Whether it's Barb or Aaron, Flora has 4 and Kevin only has 4. Barb and Aaron cannot be innocent. Is Aaron not the same thing? Oh, it's not. It's not! Barb and Aaron are almost the same, but Barb affects Chad because of the Paul and Chad's 6 innocents. Okay. Nick and Dennis have 4 innocent neighbors in common. Nick and Dennis have 4 innocent neighbors in common. Where's Nick? In total. I was like, how do they have any in common? In total. Well, Dennis can have at most 2. Nick has 2. So, 1, 2. So wait. So if Dennis and Sarah are both innocent, that makes Gary innocent. Nick and Dennis have 4 innocent neighbors in total. Henry, Gary, Joyce, Olive, Sarah. That's 5. Can those 2 be innocent and Gary be guilty? Be a criminal? I thought I figured out that didn't work. Okay. Those 2 being innocent and him a criminal. Paul would be innocent. You'd have 2 here. That's all of your innocents. But you need Nick or Will. So that doesn't work. So that makes Gary, which means Dennis has 2 innocent neighbors. Nick has 3 innocent neighbors. That's 5 in total. So doesn't that mean Dennis and Sarah can't be innocent? I feel like it does. I feel like they have to be criminals. Oh, I thought we were going that way. Okay. I'll show you next time. Well, you guys are showing me pretty well this time. This is over an hour. All right. Aaron and Zoe have 3 innocent neighbors in total. Aaron and Zoe have 3 innocent neighbors in total. Well, they already have 2. 3 innocent neighbors in total. So we need 1 more among Paul, Rose, and Flora. And if we do Paul or Rose, we have to do Will or Nick. So it's probably Flora. So if Flora is a criminal, then Paul or Rose has to be innocent. And Nick or Will has to be innocent. Okay, well, we've got the odd number criminal cops thing. Paul and I have 6 innocent neighbors in total. 1, 2, 3, 4. They need 2 more. And we know there's Aaron and Zoe have 3 innocent neighbors in total. Wait, Nick and Dennis have 4 innocent neighbors in total. Nick has 2 already. Dennis has 1. That's 3. So between Gary and Will, we need 1. Oh, but if it's Will, and you've got 2, Paul has to be innocent. Gary. Yeah, that works. That works. Okay. I was going to say, does that force it to be only 1 around Sarah and Zoe? Paul and I have 6. So we've got Paul has 3. Gary has 1. If you add Will, if Will is innocent, Nick's criminal, Rose is criminal, Paul's innocent, Gary's a criminal. That's all forced by Will being an innocent. Chad would have 1, Paul would have 4. That would force Flora to be innocent. Because Chad would then have 2, Paul would have 4. And then Nick would have 3. Dennis would have 1, that's 4. Aaron and Zoe, Aaron would have 2, Zoe would have 2, that would be 4. They need to have 3. And that was all forced by Will being innocent. So Will is criminal. I surrender, he says. Okay, very nice. All right. If Nick is a criminal, Paul and Rose are both criminals. If Nick is innocent, then one of them is innocent. If Nick is a criminal, Paul and Rose are both criminals. Gary is innocent. Nick now definitely has 2 innocent neighbors. Guaranteed 2. Nick and Dennis need to have 4. Gary has to be innocent. Okay, there we go. There are more innocent pilots than innocent teachers. Well, we have 1 innocent pilot right now. How many teachers do we have? We have Nick and Barb. So if Nick is innocent, then Aaron or Flora has to be innocent. What are we down? Where are we at now with our numbers? Our 12 total criminals. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We need 3 more criminals, and we have 5 people left. So we need 2 more innocents and 3 criminals. 2 more innocents. So if Nick is innocent, then Aaron or Flora has to be innocent. But if Nick is innocent, the other innocent left is Aaron or Flora. Paul and Rose are both criminals. If Nick is a criminal, Paul and Rose are both criminals. Paul and Rose are both criminals. Busted. You got me. Okay. So, and we need 2 more innocents. So, either both pilots are innocent or one pilot is innocent. But Kevin has 4 innocent neighbors. Flora has 3. So, if Aaron is innocent, Flora has to be innocent. Because if Aaron is innocent, Flora will have 4. Kevin will need to have 5. So it could, if Aaron is innocent, Flora is innocent. If Flora is innocent, then it could be Aaron or Nick, I think. Okay, let's see. Paul. Paul has 3. Paul and Chad have 6. Paul has 3. Chad needs to have 3. Flora is innocent. Thanks for trusting me. More innocent pilots than teachers. Well, we're good there, right? Teachers, yeah, because we can only have at most 1 innocent teacher. We already have 2. There's 1 innocent, there's 12 criminals in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. One of these 2. So these are 1 of each. 1 of each. Aaron and Zoe. Aaron has 2. Zoe has 1. That's 3. Okay. Paul has 3. Chad has 3. That's the 6. Nick and Dennis. Dennis has 2. Nick has 2. That's the 4. Kevin has 5 innocent neighbors. I don't think anybody else can have 5 at this point. Flora can have 4. Joyce has... Oh, Joyce has 4. Joyce has 4. Kevin has 5. Nick needs to be a criminal. And Aaron is innocent. All right, there we go. Well, I made 2 mistakes, solved in less than 83 minutes. I made 2 mistakes. I did not use the mistake as information per se. But man, that was a tough one for sure. If you tried it out, let me know how it went for you. And if you were just following along with me, you know, how much were you yelling at the screen? Did you even make it all the way through? If you're still watching this, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you to Sam, the creator of the game, for sending me this puzzle. I guess thank you. I think thank you. That was a struggle, but we got there. So there you go. Let me know. Was that the hardest one ever? Have you seen a harder one? What'd you think of it? And of course, be sure to subscribe for more. I gotta go take a nap now.